Leani always felt a certain level of uneasiness when it came to battle. While her summoning magic could be powerful, she had no time to make the right preparations to summon anything powerful. But as she watched the massive suit of armor that her summoned ranger was using, her fear ebbed away to make room for reassurance. The massive form took colossal strides away from the wall, and she finally looked at this one and noticed that it was mostly the same as the one he made yesterday. However, rather than the toothed sword, it had a massive hand that crackled with lightning. But after a few heavy steps, he walking stopped and raised his battle staff. "Princess, cover your ears! I'm about to test the weapon systems!" Jason's voice called out from her backpack, which took her a few seconds to put on. "Okay, fire when ready," she said back through the device, then covered her ears and looked a bit at her friend. "Wayna, cover your ears. It is about to get—" She didn't finish before a loud and deafening clap of thunder that shook the wall roared. It was accompanied by the blasts of flames out the front of the battle staff, while a barrel of metal shot out the side. Wayna covered her ears just in time before the battle staff activated again twice. The distant tree line lost 3 trees as holes got punched into them before a fireball followed, incinerating everything in a 6.5-yard area. Then the sound of roaring claps of thunder rang. These ones were smaller but still painful on the ears if unprotected, and 2 clear lines, one from under the massive battle staff and one from the battle staff by the head, reached out into the trees. She noticed that a few trees had broken down at the base and fallen over before he stopped firing. Then the rounded box on top of the giant spun around, and the roar was like the call of a salamander came as what had to be an unwieldy spear shot out of the box and soared high before coming back down, setting a 5-yard area ablaze. "Weapons test is done, all systems green, ammo count is good, aim and fire controls are normal. I am ready," his voice called out behind her. Leani uncovered her ears and spoke back. "I think you may need to fight it a bit away from the town. A few of the guards had lost their breakfast just now," she said back as she looked around, and a couple of them had fallen over in horror. "Understood. I will move to engage the Nogard when it breaks into the clearing," he said back as the massive armored form shifted and took a ready stance, the battle staff in front like a pike readied to counter a charge. "For now, however, I'll just soften the thing up," he added as the box fired off the last 5 of his spears. They soared high into the sky and off into the distance before the clouds they made shot straight down to the trees deep in the woods. The roar of the Nogard came back. It was a pained roar, like that you would hear only when someone had actually dealt it damage. But the beast was not done to her dismay as it burst through the tree line and sized her ranger's giant armor up. Her blood didn't run cold at the sight of the monster, after all. She had a monster of her own, which afforded her a chance to actually study the Nogard. It was about 15 yards tall and 3 times that long, supported on 6 stocky legs that ended in massive clawed feet. It was covered in rocky piles of sharpened rocks that gave it horns across most of its back, head, upper legs, and sides, like a way too large quill fiend. She did note the broken bits of its armor where its green blood leaked out. It let off a defiant roar as it stared at her ranger and his monster. However, as Jason started firing, she noticed the lessened sound of thunder and looked to her side as a few magi were actively focusing. She looked back to the battle that was unfolding. Jason was striding slowly forward, firing all 3 of his battle staves. The fireballs and impacts of his magic assault were actually keeping the beast back. But the Nogard was not a dumb beast, as it leaped with more grace than it would reasonably have out to the side, then rush the armor. Jason managed to turn his massive battle staff to it, landing 3 hits on its side, but not enough to slow it. He took a step back, raised his gauntlet, and clenched a fist before slamming it into the Nogard's maw. A sizable bloom of lightning shot out at the impact, and a thunderclap broke past the dampening field the Magi were holding. The Nogard lost its momentum and fell sideways before Jason grabbed one of its legs and spun, turning the upper part of his armor completely before releasing the Nogard, throwing it back toward the trees and away from the town, only to open fire again at the downed beast. But a Nogard was not easy to slay. It climbed to its feet, curled up, lowered itself to the ground, and started to endure the hail Jason was unleashing. But the sky over the Nogard shifted and sparked with magic, and she had to force her mind back to the present. Jason, it is utilizing magic, she said into the device. It looks to be some kind of assault magic. I believe it's a grand level spell. Back away now. Jason took a few steps back, then braced while still firing. This armor is equipped with a nullification shield. I should be fine. She heard him call back as a hail of iron shards showered on him as the spell finished. But all the shards were thrown sideways or melted in the air before even hitting the armor he was using. However, the Nogard used its spell to hide its movement. She spotted it a second too late as it leaped at his gauntlet, maws closing on the hand. But Jason planted his foot on the beast and pulled his arm back, and the Nogard opened its maw with a roar as Jason freed his armor's hand that had clenched around the muscly tongue of the beast, tossing it aside and opening fire again straight down the monster's throat until the beast closed its maw and backed away. Jason then stopped firing, and his voice rang out from her pack. "Ammo out, switching to assault," he said as he started running at the beast. The Nogard roared and charged at him, too, its maw spilling out a torrent of its blood over him as it leaped and landed 4 heavy hits on his armor. But the swing of a clenched fist, joined by a thunderclap, threw the beast off. Closing the gap created, Jason brought a foot down on the beast's side, using the battle staff to press the head away from him and grabbing at its throat. She could see the lightning of his gauntlet race over the beast until the area bloomed in a torrent of green blood as the beast let out a defeated roar. As the blood stopped showering the area, she could see Jason standing over the beast, looking down at it, but then spun around and let out a line of battle staff fire at the tree line. "Jason, what was that?" she quickly asked into the device. 3 Keontics. They were hiding in the beast's shadow before, but with it dead, my sensory magic found them. They are all dead now. He responded, then turned back to the beast, reached down, grabbed its tail, and started to walk back to the walls, dragging the beast along behind him. "I am going to guess that you can use this beast for meat and materials." Leani nodded a bit, not that she was sure if he could see. "Yes, I think we should take the head back to my mother and let her know we are on the way. Can you carry the head?" she asked into the device. "Yeah, but I need a break. The weight and power of this is already messing with me. Also, I don't want to leave our ride here, so I better unsummon it too," he said back after dumping the beast near the road and walking over to the wall. As the giant armor came to a stop, shuddering as the billowing smoke and glow of the helm faded, the door he had climbed into, now covered in wet and thick green blood, opened and he carefully came out. Looking over at her with a smile, he shouted, "Do you think the Queen will like our gift?" Leani failed to suppress a smile at the idea of a Nogard's head as a gift. "Yes, I think she would love it. I'll inform her we will be returning soon and warn the guard not to stop us," she shouted back and looked to Wayna. "Can you send a few riders to clear the road and inform the residents that the city is safe now?" Her friend looked over at her, a mixture of awe and fear, but nodded and walked away to get things ready. Leani looked back to Jason as he carefully jumped onto the wall and walked over, his skin a bit wet for some reason and his breathing a bit fast. "Are you okay?" she asked, a bit of worry at whatever had him like this. He blinked a bit surprised. "Oh yeah, it's just that this thing has a bit of a will of its own. You see, when I use it, I have to take control in a way, acting as the thing's brain, but that will try to get me to act the way it wants. Also, it is intoxicating to be using it. I felt it all. The recoil of the battle staff, the ground under its feet, the bite the Nogard took at its arm, but also the fact that it could destroy most things, topple a city of town on its own, tread a path of fire wherever it walked," he said, then sat down before laying backward next to her. "Not sure I can hold out in that thing for more than an hour or two." Leani carefully kneeled next to him, pulling at the skirt she wore to keep it from looking unkempt. "I see. That is not what I thought would have you like this, but what would happen if you did." "Lose myself and never leave control of it," he said back in a stern tone. "It's okay, though. I think we will use this only for when we have something big like that to fight." Leani considered it. With one of these, he could indeed take over a city or decimate an army of Keontics, But was that an acceptable trade for his skill and knowledge? Yes, I think that is a good idea, however. The Chiantics do have a habit of summoning large battle beasts in battle, but not as big as a Nogard. Not a problem. Rider infantry, equipped with some counter-armor weapons, can deal with that easily, Jason said between deep breaths. If something really big showed up, I can deal with it with a champion light magic weapon. After a few minutes of his breathing, finally let himself recover, before he sat up, got to his feet, and looked over to the massive armor. I feel like switching this one out for a different one just so it would have ammo. That may be a good idea. Can't guarantee the road would be safe, but will it have room for me? Leani asked as he walked over, watching him dismiss and summon a new one. Yeah, well, no, but you can ride on the top. I can leave the door open so you can have an easier ride. It will be a bit uncomfortable, he said as he walked to the stairs and looked down. Right, well, let me send a message to my mother, she said before closing her eyes and focusing her magic. My queen, the Nogard has been defeated. We are returning with its head for you, however. We will be arriving in a giant suit of armor. I request the guards be informed. She opened her eyes and watched Jason jump back onto the now new and non-gore-covered suit, climbing quickly in but leaving the door open. Then a reply came back. I shall meet you and your ranger at the gate. She looked up as the new suit came to life. Its hand came up and waited for her to get on. Her taking a hesitating step forward, the hand lifted her up to the door and she climbed off. Looking inside, he was strapped into a chair with a helmet and suit on, but he looked comfortable. Right, my mother will meet us at the gate. How are you feeling? She asked, and was ready for him to speak through the armor or the pack he had given her. Instead, the helmet he wore opened to reveal his mouth. I am okay. I am going to start moving, so please hold on, he said, before the air around her whipped as the suit took a step back and spun around. The rocking of the massive form threw her into him, and he let out a grunt as she landed. Princess, can I ask you to move? He said in a tone of pain. Looking at how she landed, blood rushed to her cheeks as she had landed elbow first into his stomach, getting up and away from him, but was stopped from making much distance in the cramped space. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, she said, but nearly fell over again as the suit took a second step. She finally looked about, found some footing beside his feet, and held onto two handholds in the front of the space they were in. The third step still shook them both, but she got to see him reach down with the hand of the suit, and with a sickening twist, rip the head of the Nogard off, before standing straight and starting to walk not along the road, but through the trees beside it, pushing them aside with ease. About a minute into the walk of the monstrous suit, one step was a bit bad, and she had lost her grip and fell backward, landing in his lap and getting a grunt from him. As she tried to quickly get back up, his arm held her back. It is fine. It will be more comfortable for you this way, he said in a tone that for some reason sounded delicate to her. She wasn't sure if that was fine, but she realized that no one would ever know, so she settled in before responding, Tell no one of this. My kind doesn't allow for such a position. She leaned a bit back against him as his arm that had stopped her came around her waist, as the rocking was indeed lessened. But her hearts pounded a bit hard in her ears, and the blood rushed to her cheeks. Her eyes linger on the muscled arm around her, the warmth of his form pressed against her, and the steady rush of air on her neck when he breathed out. All summoned new feelings, ones she never really considered, ones she had always hidden. Her braided hair was struggling between the two of them as she emotions ran amok, and she had to lean forward and pull her hair forward to stroke and soothe herself. Was this really what she thought it was? He had promised to give her the throne and held her as an equal. He treated her like she had always wished, standing beside her and acknowledging her, but she shook her head and dismissed these emotions. He was an outsider, a summoned man, brought here to fight a war, not be her concubine or something more. Can you tell me something? She asked, as the sensation of being held by him faded a bit. Sure, what is it? He asked back. Why do you know so many weapons from stories, and why are they all so powerful? She asked calmly, and they shook a bit with each step. He seemed to mull over the question. Most of the stories and things I am drawing these weapons from have motifs of war and strife, or were placed in the far future, or in a world of magic like yours, or a mixture of all. This thing was made to protect my people against monsters and things like the Nogard, but it was later used as a tool of war, too. And I am a massive unknown. So of course I had read, seen, and played games that were based on those stories. I can only summon things I know and understand how they work, and I'm limited by a 16.5 yards in 3 directions space, which luckily meant this is the biggest thing I can summon. Also, I think I can handle making maybe 4 or 5 of them. She felt a hard shake as a step was taken, and she steadied herself with a hand on his leg. He lost his thought for a second, then spoke again. As for why they are so powerful, that is because the stories normally have my people as the weaker ones, and we win by having weapons that overcome our limits, or can be used by magic-enhanced soldiers. So this one, this holy night as you called it, was meant to protect towns and cities? She asked, and pulled her hand away from his leg, a bit embarrassed at the proximity of her hand to his groin. Yeah, in the stories it was sent to other worlds in the Ethereum Sea, where it would protect the settlements until they could protect themselves, he said. In those stories, these were the things that acted as grand warriors, fighting enemies using similar weapons, fighting hard while soldiers and knights fight under their feet. Leani thought over the idea. To fight under this as it fought itself, surely she might get crushed, not to mention deafened by the weapon's fire, or flattened by one of the barrels it threw out to its side, and she inadvertently shuddered at the thought of being in such a battle. I see. So what kind of army do you plan to make? She asked, wishing to change the topic. Well, it will be about 200 fighters, split into 5 groups of 40, then break each into groups of 8. Each group will get 2 carriages and weapons, then they will learn to use the carriages and weapons, and when I am done, they will be able to go and get to where they need to be quick, fight the enemies, and reposition before any enemy army even has time to start moving, he said with confidence. This is basically a dumbed-down version of a rider infantry, but without a massive supply network and active reconnaissance, it is the best I can offer. How fast would they be able to reposition? She asked, as she remembered the importance of cavalry and their roles on the battlefield. I plan to drill them until they can unload, attack, and load back up and start moving within 5 to 10 minutes, he said, and tightened his arm as the following step was hard, and got her to shift a bit to be more centered on him. If they can get that down, the only limit to the fight is awareness of their surroundings and the distance they have to cover before they attack again. Her mind summoned the idea of 2 of his war carriages rolling up to a battlefield and unloading 8 of him, all of them firing the battle staff he used. Realizing that they would be close to unstoppable, their attacks cutting down waves of Chiantics and monsters alike. That sounds like a good idea, she said after a second.